Mom, Dad, I'm not throwing shade, but the whole New Year's resolution thing, kind of slipping, no offense. Anyway, my best friend Jenny's dad, crushing it. He uses Blue Apron. He says he ordered one-pan assemble and bake meals and these things called meal kits. They're all super easy to make. He keeps yelling, protein and fiber, baby. Also, the food, we tried it. So good. So maybe check it out or whatever. Blue Apron. Get 50% off your first 2 orders plus free shipping with code LISTEN50. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
Probably better than the 11 or so players that performed for Manchester United against Bilbao. Well, performed. Is that the right word? That turned up. Just about. They appeared on the pitch. Didn't do much else except get Rip a new one for the second time in a week.
They performed in the sense of they completed Ferguson's masterwork performance art piece, United in Europe, wherein he discusses the frailty of the human condition through the medium of winning the Champions League a couple of times and then this nonsense.
Yes, interesting. I would have likened it a bit more to Prison Rape, but, hey, you're the artistic one.
It's a treatise on the effect of entropy on the human condition or something like that. West Brom, that was much more like it. What a fantastic performance from United. Well, it's so different in the league this season. I was, as I said on the show, really worried about that, but my fears were unfounded as United put on something of a masterclass against West Brom.
Comfortable, very comfortable indeed. Yeah, good performance, should have had more goals. Top of the league. First time in quite a few months, that one. And no, it wasn't just so much United won, and obviously City lost, but the manner of the 2 games, I think United looked very composed, looked in control of everything, didn't look like there was any sign of panic or nerves or anything like that, even though it took quite a long time for the second goal to come. And City, by contrast, and a very big contrast, I think, lost pretty meekly in Swansea. Could have been worse, but for Joe Hart. And momentum definitely with United now, definitely. I mean, look, clearly City, all this money, great squad, strength and depth and all of that, and Carlos Tevez to come back. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but at the moment they seem to be the one who are freezing in the headlights, don't they? And United's players under Ferguson's direction obviously been there so many times before and really coming strong at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mancini to me looks like he is feeling the pressure a bit. I don't know if that's projection or...
He really does look like he's feeling the pressure. Yeah, he's just look at him in his post-match interviews. I mean, he's not gone Keegan-esque or anything like that, but he's got the 1,000-yard stare going pretty well.
Yeah, well, that's true. And just around the eyes, there's slightly less composure. And yeah, as you say, his post-match interviews. And Tevez coming back to the club must be a weird thing. I think on balance that is probably more likely to benefit them than hurt them in terms of the run-in. But you never know. I mean, rumours of a bust-up between Balotelli and Toure in the dressing room in the tunnel at half-time in the Swansea game. That's what we like to hear. And one of those just fantastic moments on Sunday when the sound around Old Trafford sort of travels almost instantaneously as 70,000 people realise that something's happened somewhere that they're not and react. And in a way, it's a shame that United can only get the ground rocking when something like that happens. But it was fantastic to hear the noise explode out of Old Trafford.
A great moment when news filtered through of Swansea's goal there. Of course, Swansea should have had a goal much earlier than that. I mean, the penalty saved very well by Joe Hart, and Swansea were excellent, I thought. And yep, absolutely, United fans responded to that. Had that kind of last game of the season feel about it in many ways, didn't it? And I mean, look, it's easy to forget there's almost quarter of the season remaining. I mean, it's an awful long time. It is squeaky bum time, I guess, as Ferguson likes to call it. And every game is just so important now, and it almost feels like the run-in has been extended. It's like election year, isn't it? Campaigning from 2 years out, and the run-in started very early this year, just in terms of its feeling and the intensity and the pressure. And I think it's partly because Tottenham start to drop away in the last few weeks, and it's really the focus on United and City now.
But it's mostly because of that hilarious crying City fan.
Oh, that was genius. It's brilliant. I mean, Schadenfreude is a very dangerous sport, isn't it? And I tweeted that one, and 15,000 people had viewed that inside a day, which was interesting. And most of them joining in the pretty graceless tweet I tweeted, which included "ha" repeated several times. It It's not just the kid was crying. I don't think it helped him that he had a touch of ginge about him as well, and so he kind of added to the drama of the moment.
That's just, of all the terrible things I've ever heard you say over the years, and listeners, there have been a few, that might be right up there. You know, we actually, if he hadn't kind of come out publicly and tried to attract the attention of Soccer AM on his Twitter feed and stuff, then I probably wouldn't have said too much about it, because, you know, you really genuinely, all joking aside, you never know when you're in the middle of catching someone who's had a family bereavement and this is just, you know, tipped the scales for him. But this clearly wasn't that. He just couldn't handle the stress of the run-in, much like we all hope that his team can't handle it.
Yeah, see, he tried to claim that he wasn't crying, but of course the video evidence tells us differently because there's tears dropping off his face.
The thing is, you're right though, there's a hugely long way to go in the season and nothing's decided yet, but we talked on the show maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago about betting odds, and United were something like 9-2 on Betfair to win the league at that point. We're now odds on to win the league, so
it's the momentum thing is a big thing. It's also the balance of fixtures, so it all adds to pressure. United are playing Wolves. We'll preview that later in the show, of course, but a game, even though they've just played against Athletic, a game that United should win. I mean, you know, fingers crossed and all that, and because we've had some pretty terrible results at Wolves over the years, but game United should win. That'll be 4 points clear of City before City play. City are playing a rejuvenated Chelsea on Wednesday night now. Game got moved at Eastlands. It's a game they could drop points in. United then have 6 games before the City game. All of them are winnable. I mean, there's not a single game we're playing against a top 6 side. And in fact, I don't think they're any against top 10 side. I mean, we play Fulham and Everton, but they're both at Old Trafford. You can get carried away with it, and normally in these circumstances I'm not necessarily a glass half full guy, but in this scenario I think the pressure's going to be hugely on City. I think United can be super professional for 6 games here. We're going to go into that derby game possibly more than 3 points ahead. It might not even matter. I wouldn't have believed it. I would not have believed that, say, in October or November when City was so brilliant and we weren't, and we're going through that period with all those injuries and all of that. It's pretty remarkable, really, given the shocking state of our European season. It's you really couldn't believe it's happening, but I think United are going to be piling more and more pressure on City, and it's up to them to respond now.
I mean, professionalism in the league has been absolutely paramount, hasn't it? Since the incident of which we do not speak, professionalism has been the watchword, because that was such an unprofessional performance. They've really ramped up their professionalism since then, and the ticking heartbeat of the team, and Michael Carrick just keeping everything moving. And apart from when our injury crisis was at its absolute apotheosis, we've been decent throughout the Premier League season.
Hey, look, Blackburn and Newcastle, injuries, poor performances, it just wasn't right during those 2 games. Aside from that, excellent and a really tough series of games just after the new year as well, and not always brilliant performances, but have managed to get it done, picked up points, kept picking up lots of points. We talked about some games where United really didn't play well, like the Norwich game, somehow managed to dig out a result for that one, from that one. And I mean, I guess that's the cliche, but it's what it's all about, right? And United are doing it, and it is creating pressure, and I think City's players are feeling it. There's some big players in the City squad who've won leagues, a couple of them with United, of course, obviously peripheral in the City squad at the moment, but as a collective they've not done it, and Mancini I don't think will ever experience this kind of pressure. I mean, his 3 titles, 1 was handed to him, and 2 came amidst the scandal of Calciopoli and some really big swings in Italian football, so I don't think he's ever been under this kind of pressure, and as we've said, he's shown signs of cracking, and that will filter through to the players for sure.
It was a brilliant performance against West Brom in many ways. I mean, there was obviously chances squandered. The Welbeck chance leaps out, but a wonderful performance from Chicharito, who has not been brilliant for a little while and really was very effective in his build-up play. The second goal in particular, his cross, the first touch and the cross was really fantastic. He took the ball first time, beat a defender and crossed the ball in, and of course he did very well for the first goal, which Rooney's attacking instincts were perfectly functioning to get him on the end of, and it was lovely stuff. And De Gea didn't have to be our man of the match for a change, which was really nice.
Yeah, I thought the front sort of four worked really well together. I agree with you, and Chicharito's probably his best game of the season. I thought he was very effective, and we're used to him having a really poor touch this season. So we had doubts about his all-round game last year, clearly, but he was scoring loads of goals. This year hasn't scored as many. It's been a disrupted season, injuries, Welbeck's form, more injuries, and all that. So it's been a tough season for him. But his first touch seemed to have gone in lots of games, and that was a real worry. And I think I tweeted after one game that they should just stick him in a room and fire balls at him until he learns how to control it.
You said it last week on the podcast.
Oh, there you go. And maybe that's what they did. Oh, we've said before, Fergie listens. Telling you, Sir Fergie, I could teach you a thing or two.
Talking of Fergie, just his helm, his steering of the ship throughout this Premier League season has been remarkable. I mean, I think Europe's been an absolute disaster this season, and it all feeds back to the fact that we took the Champions League group too lightly. You said we're just going to win every game in this group. We realistically could just easily win every game. And Fergie, as you say, listens and took your complacency to heart and instilled
it's
it.
True. It's all my fault, really.
It is. Yeah. But, you know, the Europa League was treated like the football detention that it is. I mean, you could say we played a full-strength side against Bilbao, but I don't really think that tells the full story because A, Ji-sung Park was in the side, which nowadays means it's not a full-strength side, and because the days of him playing Park in the big games for the big reasons have gone. It was just an excuse to get him on the pitch and try and get some energy in the midfield to stop their free-flowing attacking football. But we just don't look like we've cared in any of the Europa League fixtures, and I would argue that nor should we care. It is a ridiculous competition, and the way that you know it's a ridiculous competition is because we're in it, and the reason that we're in it is we got knocked out of another competition.
Oh yeah, no, look, I don't disagree with that at all. I think it's a ridiculous competition. I think the structure of it is horrible. It's all about packing in as many games as possible. It's about getting a second chance to failures from the Champions League. So, you know, it's like the parachute payment system, and but with games. I think there needs to be a second tier European competition. I think that's important.
Oh yeah, but Manchester United shouldn't.
But not in this structure, right? And you're right. United should never have been in it. We got knocked out fair and square of the Champions League. We weren't good enough to qualify. We were too complacent, as well as being not good enough. Should never have been in the Europa League. But I have to say, the approach has been pretty disgraceful. And it's not just that, yeah, okay, it's not even nearly as important as the Premier League. Fine, then show that by, you know, playing a few kids and experimenting or whatever. But the attitude of the players, even the senior pros, was that they just didn't give a damn. And there was some Thursday night, there was some extremely complacent performances. Actually, that's not even the right word. There were some performances of players who just didn't want to be there, and you know, don't like to pick out players' names because obviously it's a team game and all that. But Patrice Evra at left back, he just jogged around half the time. Wayne Rooney at one point was scored a blinding goal, but gave the ball away, just didn't bother running after it. Tom Cleverley, got to say, I was really disappointed with his performance. Okay, he's not fit. Can't expect miracles, but he just kind of coasted through it. Just too many players that happened to, and that's not right at all because that's not Manchester United. I mean, Roy Keane's quote about, you know, when you play inferior teams, and not that Athletic are an inferior team by any means, I mean, they've proven that, but when you play, you know, smaller teams in some way, the work rate has got to come first, and then your talent should show. That didn't even happen. You know, we could have been outplayed over two legs, but given it every effort. And we clearly didn't, because we can see what every effort is, and that's what Athletic provided, and fantastic performance. I mean, if it wasn't for their poor finishing, they could have scored 6 or 7 easily.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, you often hear of a performance, oh, that team could have scored 6 or 7, but legitimately, there's absolutely no reason that they didn't score 6 or 7, except their finishing wasn't quite up to it. I don't quite agree with your central thesis, which is that United players should have been giving it their all in this game. I mean, I think it's completely reasonable to believe that they should, and I think probably most United fans would side with you that you're pulling on the United shirt, you've got to give it your all, you've got to at least appear to be committed, or you've got to be committed. But I think a friend of mine said to me this week, who shall remain nameless, it's kind of a shame we got that penalty in the last minute at Old Trafford, because it meant we have to pretend to take this second leg seriously, because legitimately I think we had barely a hope of getting through this game unless we put absolutely everything into it and hit our very, very, very top peak of performance, and that just seemed remarkably unlikely, and actually a kind of strolling defeat to get rid of the nonsense of trying to win this league, having to play out every Thursday night for a trophy that just doesn't matter in the overall scheme of things. They're kind of better to shamble through the game and get it out of the way and just like put the whole thing behind us. They tried to do it against Ajax.
But that's a terribly arrogant position, isn't it? I mean, it's a position that says that we're United, somehow we have some kind of moral right to be in the Champions League. No, it's a competitive sport. So...
No, not at all. We've messed it up. We've messed up being in the Champions League, but we don't have to take football detention seriously. And this ridiculous farce of you're knocked out of the Champions League, now you have to play this other competition that doesn't mean anything or means an awful lot to Europe's second tier of clubs. You know, it's a competition for teams like Athletic Bilbao. That's why the competition exists. And it's not that we have a divine right to be in the Champions League and all else is meaningless. It's that we've been in 3 Champions League finals in the last 4 years, and the Europa League just cannot live up to it, and it's going to massively distract us from a title fight, which we're going to have to absolutely dig in and find every ounce of talent, professionalism and stamina in order to beat Manchester City. It's the first time it's been an all-Manchester title race since for living memory of almost all the people that support both those clubs.
Right, yeah, look, practically you're right, but there's more than that though, isn't it? We're supposed to be one of the biggest clubs in the world, one of the best teams in Europe, and all of that close to Real Madrid and Barcelona. And not only do we embarrass ourselves in the Champions League, but we've now embarrassed ourselves in the Europa League. And it's not just that we were so thoroughly beaten by Athletic over 2 legs. This is the club that is currently 7th in La Liga, but we just didn't make any effort either. And I don't think that's the Manchester United way, whatever that is. It's definitely not being so meek about it. And I should bloody well hope it's not the Ferguson way either. I mean, I just thought it was pretty disrespectful, really. I mean, at least give the opposition a bloody game. Didn't even do that. So, to be honest, I'd just rather... I think you're right in that the tie was lost. Been better just playing a whole bunch of kids. Give them a shot, you know? Give them a shot.
Yeah.
Because we've ended up with Rooney turning over on his ankle, Ferdinand coming off with a calf injury, Michael Carrick's had over an hour and he's got to play in like 48 hours time. Ryan Giggs had most of the game. There's nothing good, aside from we don't have to play any more games on a Thursday night. Nothing good came out of that tie at Athletic.
No, except Rooney's goal, which is remarkable. Fantastic hit. Oh, and one other thing that was good that came... Well, actually, I mean, in terms of just like football, it was brilliant to watch Bilbao. They were incredibly exciting. They played wonderful football, and that Llorente goal was... I'd love United to play like that.
Wouldn't you like United to play like that though? I mean, you know, intensity, the passing, and we couldn't cope with it. Just couldn't cope with it. They pressed us, and we were taught this lesson in the 2009 Champions League final. You know, high pressing. We were not good enough to keep the ball. Fact, right? You know, put all the other stuff aside that we shouldn't care about it, whatever. They just weren't technically good enough either.
No, and that's the actual issue at hand. That Ferguson said at the end of last season's Champions League final, we've got to find a way to get closer to Barcelona. The 2009 Champions League final, we went into...
Oh no, apparently we have. I mean, didn't you hear him a couple of weeks ago? We're really not far away.
Yeah, we're on some other footballing planet. We're nowhere near Barcelona's, like, a team that play similarly to them but don't have quite the same level of quality. You know, that's the reality of it. But getting closer to Barcelona is, if it's done properly, surely requires some sort of root and branch. You know, it starts with our 12-year-olds, let alone our first team, right? I mean, the coaching at United has been revolutionised in the last decade, and one hopes that you'll see the fruits of that. And in fact, you kind of are in a way, because Welbeck and Cleverley are 2 of the most technically gifted players in the side. Or maybe, let me not say technically gifted, but technically able. And you wonder if that's something to do with the fact that there is a change in emphasis in coaching.
You're right, it's all about technique. They don't get enough time with the players, but we're definitely not producing as many as Barcelona. I mean, another one coming along, we had Cuenca earlier this season. I mean, along with the 57 players they've already got that have come through La Masia. Cuenca came along this season, a winger, very good. And now Christian Tello is another fine player. They just keep churning out these kind of wide players, don't they? And just another technically gifted player who's better than anything anyone else has got.
Yeah, yes, it's crazy, isn't it? It's a ridiculous thing, and you know, partly it's a phase of history, and these things happen, and clubs rise and fall. But this was architected at Barcelona. they did this on purpose. You know, this goes back to Johan Cruyff, basically.
Yeah, and every single one of their teams plays the same way. They have a way of coaching. There's a philosophy at the club, and they ally that with, you know, tons of money spent in the transfer market. And it's, you know, how many times we had this conversation? It's a balanced approach. We're not going to beat Barcelona suddenly churning out 20 kids from the reserve team. It's really difficult. It's really, really difficult. Barcelona seems to have done it in droves. We don't seem to be able to at the moment, not at the same level. And I mean properly, I mean players coming through from that system and making it big in the first team, because I don't think actually any of those kids really have. I mean, Welbeck's basically established as a first teamer. Cleverly isn't. He's had 4.5 games of good football this season, got injured, and then every single game since has been a comeback game or an injured or comeback or, you know, brand 23. And I know I get annoyed by this, and it's not really having to go at Cleverly. I think he could become a very good player for United, but fact is he's 23 and has had 4 good games for United. You know, let's put this into perspective. He might become a very good player for United. He might become a very good player for England. He might be the you know, the next best thing since Paul Scholes. He might be, and it is all might. He kind of really ought to be, you know, learning about how to do that, and the let's hire a brand consultant so I can get some perfume or some underpants named after me seems to not be the right focus.
Yeah, I don't know. The thing is, it leaves a bad taste in the mouth, all that stuff. But on the other hand, he's not doing that in...
Well, certainly if you drink it, yeah.
On the other hand, he's not doing that instead of training. He's doing that in the ample amount of spare time he's got, and it's probably a relatively harmless thing for him to be doing in that spare time compared to what other footballers might be getting up to.
Maybe it's a very superficial argument. It probably is, but
but
he didn't look very focused against Athletic. I'll tell you that. He looked like he was strolling through that, and this is a kid who's coming back from injury. He should be desperate. He should be absolutely desperate to get the minutes in to prove that he's worth a place in the side. I mean, he won't be in the side at the weekend. Paul Scholes, 47 will be in the side ahead of him, and he should be looking at that and going, how did Paul Scholes still get in the side ahead of me? You know, the guy retired, spent 9 months out of the game, and has come back and is still way better than me. I need to learn something from this.
Yeah, hopefully he is. Hopefully he's humble enough to learn something. And in fairness, the older players around him weren't giving him much of an example in that Bilbao game.
They certainly weren't, no.
You know, this United side is a very strange mixture of psychologies and personalities, and we have in us both that never say die, fight till the last minute Ryan Giggs winner against Norwich and the complete capitulation throughout the season in Europe. We have both sides of those. There are polar opposites in attitude and performance displayed, and it's partly to do with the fact that footballers earn too much money too young to learn properly. It's so difficult for them not to have their heads turned and not for their egos not to be overdeveloped and not to have too grand a sense of themselves. You know, it takes a person of staggering emotional and mental balance not to have their ego inflated by playing for Manchester United as a teenager, when your ego development is still ongoing and 70,000 people chant your name and the papers write that you're the best thing since sliced bread and you score the winner against City or whatever and become a cult hero. It's gonna, all those things affect you, and the nature of modern football means they affect you in a very different way to what they did even 10 years ago. The generation that came through wasn't quite as intensely mollycoddled and spoiled as they are now, and certainly not 20 years ago when Giggs and Scholes' generation came through.
No, and although this is a cultural thing that they have to write in the club, I guess. You know, it's. I don't know that younger players at United are losing focus. I don't know, but I don't like it when I hear that a player has trademarked a brand name because that's really important for him.
No, I agree. It's ridiculous.
When he hasn't made it yet, you know, it's the same with young kids wearing gold boots as Pogba did the other day. I mean, it's okay. Maybe I'm old school. I don't like gloves either. I'm old school. You know.
On the other hand, if you are a 20-year-old footballer with his whole career ahead of him, trademarking if you were a business, you wouldn't say, oh, they shouldn't be trademarking their brand at the outset of their business. They should wait until they've proven themselves and made it. He has the opportunity to prove himself and make it, so he's laying foundations just in case. That's I am not...
Yeah, but you can't polish a turd, you know? If you're not good on the pitch, then your brand's not worth anything.
This is the thing about that argument that slightly gets me, because I agree with you. Philosophically, it seems ridiculous, and as I said, it definitely leaves a bad taste in the mouth. But he's not doing that instead of trying to be good at football. He's doing it as well, and he definitely has time to do both things. But, Rio has had this criticism throughout his career, that he's too many outside interests, too much plugging his magazine and his app and his restaurant and all that stuff. But no lack of professionalism from Rio, he's an incredible professional.
I'm actually not arguing that there's a correlation between the two things. I'm not arguing it. I'm saying I don't like it.
You're right, because nobody in their right mind would like it.
There you go. So, talking of young players and sense of self-worth, Paul Pogba may be staying at United. I think we've had 2 conversations in the last 2 weeks about him leaving. Definitely, absolutely, definitely leaving. And now he is. It seems that Pogba is happy to stay if he gets the opportunities. And funnily enough, he is getting the opportunities now. And his agent is desperate for him to move because he's got that big lump sum coming from Juve if he does.
If I go, there will be trouble. If I stay, there will be double. It's just been stuck in my head every time I think of Pogba. He's going to stay now, right? He's played the last 2 games. Surely this is a sign. It's a sign. It's proof.
Yeah, I've no idea. I mean, there was some kind of groupthink going around that he definitely wouldn't play if he'd agreed to go already. Ferguson wouldn't have it. And I don't know if that's true or not, because Ferguson actually said quite clearly that the guy is still thinking about it. So there you go. But he's had what, half an hour in both games now, last couple or maybe 20 minutes against West Brom, and so more opportunities than he's had for most of the previous part of the season, and did okay in both games. Not brilliantly, not as good as that cameo against Stoke, but he certainly doesn't look short of confidence. Feels like he fits in with the group and doesn't quite take up the right position, so I see him wandering. He passes and moves and then takes up slightly wrong positions, and I'm sure he'll learn from playing with better players, and they'll coach the hell out of him. So there's plenty to work with there. I hope he stays, because I think he's got loads of talent, but I don't think it's a done deal yet.
You know why he gets out of position, don't you? It's because he's sat there thinking, should I stay or should I go now? Should I cool it or should I blow? That's what he's thinking.
Rantcast, the album, out on iTunes and all good record stores.
Talking of footballers and whether or not they're gonna leave or not, this one won't have us singing that. It will leave me sitting in the corner singing, all by myself. Don't wanna be. Because Dimitar might be leaving, Ed. I'm not sure I'm ever going to get over it.
Bridget Berbatov. It's interesting, this one, isn't it? Because Ferguson doesn't like to talk about players coming or going, really. He usually gives short shrift to that one, but spoke quite a bit about Berbatov and said that they will activate the clause in his contract, so he won't be leaving on a free transfer, but that the player wants to play, and that'll probably mean he'll seek a move in the summer. So that kind of sums it up, and didn't even get on the bench versus Athletic. I mean, we were talking about United not really taking it very seriously. If you can't find place on the bench, even the bench, for a player of Berbatov's talents, then there's something definitely wrong there.
Yes. I guess, should we leave the Berbatov extensive post-mortem to when, if he actually does go? Because I'm going to want to dedicate some time to it just to get it properly out of my system.
We'll have a Berbatov special. There you go. We can talk for an hour on the merits of Dimitar Berbatov. But it does seem like he's definitely going to go. And he's been so underused this year. I mean, he had 5 starts in the Premier League. He's barely played at all. So he's almost as peripheral as Michael Owen. Michael Owen still exists. He isn't just a horse trainer, although you wouldn't believe it from his Twitter timeline.
He's injured though, right? Presumably? Just want to assume that that's the case.
Well, I kind of think you should do the same with Owen as you do with horses when they're lame. Just shoot them.
There's nothing wrong with Michael Owen apart from, he likes horses. He's all right.
Ship him off to the glue factory, which is what we should do with Anderson, the big boned Brazilian who we spoke about last week, and looks like Ferguson said he's going to be out for at least 5 weeks, and being Anderson, that means 5 months. So we probably won't see him again this season.
You said that last time and he got back really quickly, but then got immediately injured again.
Yeah, he had 20 minutes and he'd only had a couple of Big Macs before the game, so he was obviously low on fuel there. And his body said, oh no, we should have had the double whopper with bacon, cheese and large fries.
It's all over, right? Anderson's got to be off in the summer, surely.
He's got to go. Look, this is 5 seasons. If that's not enough to prove yourself at a club, I've seen all the arguments. He had a great game against Fabregas once in 1992. Yes, he did have a great game against Fabregas once in 1992. Yes, he did nutmeg him. But over the piece, this is 107 starts and 140 odd games over 5 years. He's not played nearly enough because he's injured most of the time. He doesn't look fit enough most of the time, although he did look slimmer earlier this season, so maybe something had happened there. And he just hasn't put in the performances, and that's the most important part. So 5 years into it, and it really is time to cut our losses on that. It's 30 million euros that one costs, and won't get anywhere near that back.
If it's all amortised in it on the books, it's not going to reflect as a loss, is it? Probably, because he's been here so long.
No, I mean, it's not on the books anymore at all. He signed a new contract in December 2010, so you don't amortise after that anyway. Get all technical and financial on your ass. It doesn't count. I mean, he's a zero-rated asset, effectively, from a taxation and UEFA financial fair play perspective. So.
And also effectiveness on the pitch perspective, unfortunately. Yeah, whenever I say, people don't like the finance stuff, I always get loads of tweets and stuff saying I'm in the 10% of people who do like it. I haven't quite hit the threshold where it's definitely over 10% yet in terms of number of tweets, but if every one is reflective of like 10 people that do, I think it might be closer to 15-20% of people that enjoy that stuff. If Anderson goes in the summer and is joined by, we had an interesting question from @Doran Solomon asking if Berbatov goes and Owen goes, which is very likely, and then Makeda either gets sold or shipped out on loan again, and Will Keane goes out on loan, we're actually kind of short then up front. Are we looking at potentially Fergie signing another striker, or maybe keeping one of those people around?
Depends whether there's a freebie. Of course, he had his scouting trip to Lyon this week to watch Lyon versus Lille in Ligue 1 over in France, and of course all the papers said that he was off to watch Eden Hazard. I think Glazonomics tells us something different. He was off to watch Joe Cole, wasn't he?
Yeah, I was going to say, does Fergie sign him up? Maybe out of push if he's really cheap.
Yeah, well, he is of course a Liverpool player, so I suspect after the Heinze-gate they probably wouldn't sell him even if we wanted him, and that would be pretty embarrassing going cap in hand to that bunch of... Anyway, so God knows, Hazard is going to go for a huge amount of money. There has been talk about Ferguson wanting him to play more centrally alongside Rooney, because he kind of plays in that kind of deep-lying attacking midfielder, or sometimes and generally more from a wide position in a 4-3-3. But I mean, he can basically play in a whole bunch of attacking roles. I can't see it happening. I really can't. He's going to be big money. Zinedine Zidane, who has the ear of the president, El Presidente at Real Madrid, has said he'd sign him without a second thought. So I think that might give us an idea of where he'll probably end up. That's just my guess, and of course, I'm normally wrong on these things anyway.
So what's Fergie doing there then? Is it just PR? Is it to get
I'm sure he's looking at a player. I don't know which one. There's talk about it being Debuchy, the right back from Lyon. It could be any number of players. Sadly, it could well be Joe Cole, but God.
So not Monsieur Hazard, il ne vient pas.
So what I'd been told from the grapevine is that he has about 30 million to spend in the summer. It might just stretch to Hazard. Maybe he'll pick up some more. What would we get for Berbatov? 5 million maybe. Virtually nothing from Macheda, who by the way I do think will go. I can't see them wasting another year by keeping him at the club or loaning him. I think they'll probably seek a buyer for him. Owen will go. I think I said I will go and picket Carrington personally if they give him another year's contract.
You might have to, because I don't know, he might just say, do you know what?
Do you know what? I'm going to go dress as Batman, like, Fathers for Justice, and I'm going to go climb over the fence at Carrington and get up on the roof of the training centre with Owen out banner.
So on the day this podcast comes out, a bunch of our kids will be playing 6:45 ITV4 in England if you're listening to this today. Otherwise you've missed it. Sorry, you might be able to watch it on the internet. You know how these things go. But massive FA Youth Cup tie against Chelsea.
Yes, it's second year in a row, and I know we talked about this one last week. Played very well over 2 legs last year. Lost the first leg away at Stamford Bridge and then won at Old Trafford, a convincing win, and sent us through to the FA Youth Cup. Very different side this year, obviously very young, but done very, very well to get this far, and I think overperformed. I don't really know much about the Chelsea youth side. There's probably people who watch more of them than I do, so who knows, but great luck to them. I think they've done great this season. It'd be nice to see them come away with a win over the 2 legs. Don't think there's a date for the second leg yet. At least there wasn't when I last looked for it. That will be at Stamford Bridge in a couple of weeks' time. I think it's Old Trafford the first game, isn't it? And great luck to them.
It is definitely on ITV4, which is pretty cool for those of us who are not prepared to pay a subscription to MUTV, because that seems like a ridiculous thing to do. And it's nice occasionally to watch football on the actual television instead of over the internet. Talking of watching football on the actual television, and indeed talking of Chelsea, I might not know much about the Chelsea youth team, but I'm pretty sure they're managed by John Terry, who seems to be in control of everything at Chelsea. Did you watch Chelsea's heroic, backs against the wall, flag waving, marvellous performance against the High Ties last night?
I did. And there was the hilarious moment when Terry's barking the orders and Roberto Di Matteo was looking a bit sheepish, and then thought, actually, I better step forward and look managerial here. And then Terry's still barking the orders. I mean, we know who wears the trousers in that household, don't we?
Unbelievable. Can you imagine that happening at Manchester United? I can tell you what, you can't imagine it happening at Manchester United, because Mike Phelan's barely allowed to stand there and do that, let alone a player. I mean, it's an absolute disgrace. The kind of received wisdom about Chelsea is that Villas-Boas got sacked because Lampard and Drogba and Terry run that dressing room and they didn't like him and they didn't like the way he treated Frank and all that stuff. And I kind of thought, I bet that's got to be a bit exaggerated, you know, it can't be quite that blatant. But John Terry was standing there managing the team, sitting there doing finger gestures and like, two of you over here, and unbelievable.
Yeah, Phelan tried that once and he was told to wear very tight shorts after that and sit in the corner like a very naughty boy.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a disastrous performance in Europe for Manchester United this season, but at least we're not Chelsea.
Mind you, they are through to the quarterfinals of the European Cup.
My word, even. They're not going to get anywhere in the European Cup, though. Napoli are all right, but they actually they did defend very well against Napoli this week, I thought, but they're not going to get anywhere. And Fernando Torres, every time he warms up and gets ready to come on, you just think, is this it? Is this the one? But you've stopped thinking that, haven't you, Ed? You're convinced he's...
No, I really haven't. You know what he reminds me of? Have you ever seen that clip with Gaza where he's playing that joke where he looks like he's trying to go and try and pick the ball up and he accidentally kicks it and then does it again? That's Fernando Torres. Every time he goes to the ball, you think he's going to try and trap it, but he actually kicks it about 10 yards in front of him and then he kind of stumbles over a bit and then he's completely fluffed it. It's embarrassing. It's really embarrassing. The guy is shot.
I do feel for him. I genuinely...
People keep saying he's going to come good. I don't think so. He's had over a year of this now. He's got some deep-rooted mental problem, and I think it's some kind of post-traumatic stress. He spent too long in Liverpool, and it's like the guys who've come back from Nam. They're gone, and he's gone.
I was watching him, and his whole body language. He just seemed absent from himself. It's
the horrors. He can't get over it. It's the horrors of Anfield.
Yes.
And of course he's got to play with black players at Chelsea as well. That's probably pretty awful for him, coming out of the clan.
Maybe that's why he left. Maybe he's a nice chap and he didn't want to be associated with that sort of language. All this is pure speculation. Suffice to say, if I saw Fernando Torres in the street, I would be hard pressed not to want to give him a manly arm around the shoulder and say, it's going to be all right, Nando. You might come good again. Don't worry so much. I guess that brings us on to the preview of the one game in United's fixture calendar. Isn't it lovely? One game a week in the league. Very old-fashioned, all this, not being in a cup competition in March.
Oh dear, yeah. This is what it's like to be Liverpool, isn't it?
No, it's not, because we're competing for the league title.
Very true. Well corrected. Thank you very much for bringing me back down to earth there. Yes, it is nice. Yeah, not having to record this on a Thursday night is very nice.
Yeah, it's really going to help.
Wolves away at the weekend. We've had a couple of dodgy results there down the years, haven't we? And after my prediction earlier this season that Wolves were quite a good side and they'd be comfortably safe, I was once again proven massively wrong, and they've fallen like a stone, and they're in big, deep trouble. And interesting that the secret footballer column from last weekend was about how assistants and number twos rarely make good managers, and especially not when they're promoted, because the players don't respect them at all. And that's an interesting one, and wonder whether Wolves could get a bump, and it doesn't look like they will get any kind of bump from the change from sacking Mick McCarthy, and they look in real trouble. And I know United have got a very quick turnaround. I mean, fly home Thursday night, rest, recuperation Friday, a few massages or ice baths and that kind of stuff, and light training on Saturday, and straight back into it, but can't see anything else than the United turning them over.
No, I mean, it's not like United suffered from a massive outpouring of either physical or emotional energy in the Bilbao game. I'm sure there are a few bruised egos and stuff, but they, as we've discussed at length, they clearly didn't care that much about the game, or didn't appear to care that much about the game.
No, and thankfully Carl Henry's out, so that reduces the chances of any broken limbs quite substantially.
I mean, what Wolves are doing, sacking Mick McCarthy and replacing him with Terry O'Connor, is just, it's completely ridiculous, because Mick McCarthy has overachieved with Wolves fairly substantially given their levels of investment, and
totally has. Yeah, a really, really odd process as well. They took ages and basically offered Steve Bruce the job. He wants to accept it, and then they seem to have changed their mind and then blamed him for not taking it quickly enough.
I mean, the problem is he lost 5-1 to West Brom. It's really as simple as that. And at some point, the level of pressure from the fans on the board becomes overwhelming, and it would have taken a really, really... because he had so little credit in the bank, ridiculously, because football fans are ridiculous, I don't actually think it's justified that he had such little credit in the bank, but once that happened...
Who took them to the Premier League?
Twice, and kept them up. Yeah. You know, it's...
on a small budget.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And, you know, I had Wolves fans saying, oh, Stephen Fletcher, if they can afford to pay $7 million for Stephen Fletcher, why can't they buy X, Y and Z player? And it's like, well, you do know they have to pay the wages as well, right? It's not just the transfer fee. And, you know, anyway, which is not to say I think it's going to be a complete walk in the park, because they've got some players and they raise their game against the big sides. Sometimes Wolves do, but whilst I wouldn't be surprised if it's a kind of scrappy 2-1 or slightly flattering scoreline 3-1, I also wouldn't be at all surprised if we do absolutely annihilate them, because if we perform as we can and they plumb some of the depths they've been plumbing recently, it could be embarrassing for them. But equally, you know, it could be a lot tighter.
Well, it's got to be a better performance than it was against Athletic away, that's for sure. And actually, United's away performances in the Premier League have been great this season. So, I mean, you know, it should hold no fears. Complete turnaround from last season, of course, where we had pretty horrendous record for most of it. So I think United will go there and win fairly comfortably. I just hope there haven't been any injuries from the Athletic game, and Ferdinand coming off with a calf injury. He's pretty important because Smalling's not quite ready. I mean, he's wearing every week his head protection apparatus gets bigger and bigger. He'll be wearing some kind of tin hat against Wolves at this stage if Rio isn't fit, and Jones has got this flu bug, so he won't be in there. Raphael, I have to say, didn't have a very good game against Athletic, so it's not looking good on the defensive front right now. They'll patch everyone together hopefully, and it'll be enough just to make sure we get through that game.
Yeah, absolutely, and we've obviously got huge amounts of firepower available to us, and I'm sure, well, I'm not sure, but I think Scholes-Carrick midfield 2 is very likely and could be extremely effective in that game.
I'm sure that's very likely, yeah, and Valencia didn't make the bench against Athletic, but could be in the squad. Well, he will be in the squad again against Wolves. Nani could be back. He's only got a bruised shin, so it's nothing serious, so he could be back. And Park won't be on the pitch, so we might actually be able to keep the ball, which would help. You know, it's one of those things, possession's quite important sometimes.
It's amazing how different talking about a Scholes and Carrick midfield 2 feels than this time last season when we talked about Scholes and Carrick midfield 2 with some dread. Now it's like, oh yeah, that'll be amazing. We'll get to watch Scholes and Carrick knock the ball around. I can't remember if I mentioned this during the Bilbao review, but one incredible positive from that was the reaction of the Bilbao fans to Ryan Giggs' substitution.
Yeah, which was really nice, and it was a fantastic moment, wasn't it? And here's a set of fans who are a real tight-knit community, and they respect a player who's played his entire career for one club and been a great player at that. Yeah, really brilliant moment.
And it's kind of interesting to get that sort of perspective on Giggs, because, you know, he's just Giggs. He's just always been there. But when you see him through the eyes of another team's crowd who appreciate what he has been to another club, I don't know, I found it very moving. So yeah, it was super cool. So predictions, I'm going with 3-1 United.
Yeah, you know what, I'm going to match you. I think that's a good result. Yes, there may be some tiredness in the back four, and there may not be too many players fit, so that could cause a problem. But yeah, I think we'll score 3, and I think they'll score 1. There you go.
It's always please, please, please. You're only happy when I'm on my knees. That's what Paul Pogba's agent is saying to him, trying to get him to leave. But Pogba's there like, no.
Well, of course, it was International Steak and Blowjob Day yesterday.
Surely not relevant to this discussion. Although maybe that's how Fergie got... No, this podcast is over.
We'll see you next week.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Styles McKenzie helping you make those rooms sing. Today's style tip. When it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild, like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Arr, fierce. This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.